I want to bring in Liberal Senator James Paterson from Canberra. Thanks for joining us, James. I want to get on to China in a moment, but given we often talk about foreign interference, what's your view of a digital giant like YouTube banning Sky News from its platform?
Chris, I'm just relieved that this wasn't a question about the BMX to start off with, because I'd be on very shaky ground. But on the substantive and important issue you raised about YouTube, look, it's concerning on a number of levels. I don't want to see the free debate in Australia restricted by a foreign corporation. I don't want to see Silicon Valley executives impose their values on our free, public, square and open debate. Now, of course, YouTube is a private company. They've created their own technology, and if they want to put a condition on uploaded videos that they all must be uploaded if they're filmed upside down, then that's their right as a private company. But I think they should think very carefully about the implications of doing so and the fact that they're effectively playing the role of censor around the world. And I think they should really carefully reflect on the failure that Facebook experienced last year when it banned what it then labelled misinformation from being discussed and uploaded to the Facebook platform, which was the suggestion that the origins of the virus was anything other than natural. To post about it potentially having leaked from a lab in Wuhan was banned on Facebook. Now, Facebook subsequently had to reverse that position because the Biden administration reversed its position and said it wanted to look into that. Now, this is a really good example why social media companies should not put themselves in the place of being arbiters of truth. They're not well placed to judge that. They can't predict in the future what we are going to learn. And so they should really take a very cautious, very reserved position and censor as little as possible and allow as much free speech as possible on their platforms. Otherwise, I think they can find themselves in a very sticky area.
Yeah, I agree, well articulated. And I think if there's something they believe is factually incorrect, they should demand a correction or get rid of that, perhaps. But what they've done is way over the top, and we'll hear a lot more about it. I want to get back to the issue of spies and, by implication, China. You've talked about on the weekend how a number of spies from this country have been sent packing. These presumably might be diplomats and the like who are sent home from the country. What are the activities that are going on with foreign spies in this country that most concern you?
Chris, in his annual threat assessment, the Director General of ASIO, Mike Burgess, talked about some of the successes that ASIO has had over the last year, using the record resources and the new powers that the Parliament and the Morrison government have granted ASIO in recent years. And one of the success stories that ASIO has been able to talk about and share publicly is identifying instances of foreign state espionage that have been exposed by ASIO, that have been drawn to attention of the host government. And in order to avoid their own embarrassment, the host government has, in many cases, withdrawn their own spies. And that's a very welcome thing. But we're operating in a deteriorating strategic environment, as the Defence Strategic Update really articulated well last year. Our region is changing, and it is being characterised by rising authoritarian powers like China, who are not new authoritarian powers but are more powerful than ever before and have decided to approach the region and the world in a much more aggressive and assertive way than ever before. We haven't changed. We're the same liberal democracy that we were 5, 10 or 20 years ago, but we do have to adapt to respond to that, to safeguard our sovereignty, our democracy and our freedom.
Yeah, you point out how the normal way to deal with these things are people just quietly leave the country, and that respects freedom, it respects international law, and it respects, I suppose, continuing diplomatic relations. Yet we see, on the other hand, China imprison Australians, often joint citizens. The implication of spying is used to justify their imprisonment, and there's no access or transparency about the justice process.
I think we have to be absolutely crystal clear here, Chris. There is no false equivalence to be drawn between the Australians who are detained in Australia right now and any spies that might have been asked to leave Australia over the last year, because the two Australians in particular you're probably referring to, Dr Yang Henjung and Chung Lei, are not spies and do not act for the Australian government. They are Australian citizens who we believe have been detained without any evidence that they've conducted anything other in any unlawful way, and we're very concerned by what appears to be their ongoing arbitrary detention in China. But it is a fair point that you raise, that we deal with these things sometimes professionally and discreetly, while other nations do not. Some of the reasons why we have to deal with it professionally and discreetly is that sometimes it might be a foreign diplomat who is identified performing a dual role, and they have diplomatic immunity, and it is not an option for us to detain and prosecute them here in this country. All we can do is render them a persona non grata and ask them to go home. And so sometimes that is the appropriate way to do it. But where it's appropriate and necessary to raid, to arrest, to investigate, to ultimately charge people engaged in foreign interference or espionage, we will do so. There is already one person before the courts in Victoria under a charge of preparing an act of foreign interference, and there have been other people who've been raided by the AFP and ASIO and are subject to ongoing investigation and inquiries.
Yeah, it's a murky area. Thanks for shedding some light on it for us, Senator. It's very important.
Thanks, Chris.